A thrilling story of redemption, love, passion, and new beginnings, a forbidden love between an 18-year-old virgin and a 52-year-old millionaire. What began as a contract for a single night revealed a secret that could ruin them both. Watch this story until the end. You'll be surprised by this tale. If you enjoy love stories, romance, subscribe to this channel. Leave your comment. We post videos like this every day, continuing. The rain beat against the windows of the mansion like furious tears, creating a melancholic symphony that echoed through the empty corridors. Samuel Lawrence Blackwood remained motionless before the fireplace, the whiskey untouched in his right hand, his eyes fixed on the flames that danced hypnotically. 52 years of life, and yet he felt like a dead man walking among the living. Nudvery. Sound of the intercom cut through the silence like a blade. Samuel didn't move. No one came up here without prior notice. His refuge in the Colorado Rockies was sacred, a sanctuary where the ghosts of the past could wander freely without being disturbed by curious glances or empty words of condolence. The intercom sounded again, more insistent this time. Samuel sighed, placed the glass on the mahogany table and walked to the security monitor. The black and white image revealed a small, soaked figure on the other side of the gate. A young woman, almost a girl, with an envelope pressed against her chest as if it were a protective talisman. "Who is it?" His voice echoed through the communication system, cold and cutting like the wind that howled outside. "My name is Lily Martinez." Her voice trembled slightly, but there was a surprising determination behind the apparent fragility. "I need to talk to you, sir. It's about my mother." Samuel felt something constrict in his chest. Martinez. The surname echoed in his mind like a distant echo, unearthing memories that he had buried deeply. Bianca Martinez, the name that he had forbidden himself to pronounce for more than 2 decades. "I don't know any Martinez," he lied, his voice even colder. "Bianca Martinez," the young woman insisted, and Samuel saw through the camera how she raised the envelope. "She left me a letter for you before she died." The world seemed to stop. Samuel held the edge of the console, his knuckles whitening. Bianca was dead. The woman who had departed from his life like smoke, taking her secrets, with her and leaving only ruins in his heart, was dead. And now her daughter was there, wet and trembling, carrying ghosts that he didn't have the strength to face. But curiosity and hatred are twin brothers, and Samuel discovered that he couldn't simply close the door to the past. Not this time. The gate opened with an electronic groan. Lily walked along the stone pathway, her simple shoes occasionally slipping on the wet surface. The mansion rose before her like a fortress of stone and glass, imposing and intimidating. Each step took her further from the world she knew and closer to a destiny that she couldn't predict. She had left the convent just 3 days ago. 3 days since she discovered the truth about the arranged marriage that the Mother Superior had negotiated for her. 3 days since she found the hidden letter among her mother's few possessions, stored in a dusty box in the institution's attic. The letter spoke of secrets, of dangers, of a man named Samuel Blackwood who could be her salvation or her downfall. Bianca hadn't been clear about which of the 2 options was more likely. The main door opened before Lily could even knock. The man who appeared in the doorway was exactly as she had imagined, and completely different at the same time. Tall, imposing, with perfectly combed grey hair and eyes that seemed capable of seeing through anyone's soul. He wore a dark cashmere sweater and perfectly tailored pants, every detail of his appearance screaming luxury and control. But it was his eyes that made her tremble. Blue as ice and equally cold, they carried the weight of someone who had seen too much and lost even more. "Come in," he said simply, taking a step to the side. Lily hesitated for a moment, remembering her mother's words. Never trust. But the cold of the rain was cutting, and she had nowhere to go. She crossed the threshold and found herself in an entrance hall that seemed to come straight out of a museum. Marble, crystal, and noble woods combined in a symphony of elegance that made the convent where she had grown up seem like a shack. "Take off your coat," Samuel ordered, and his voice echoed in the vast space. "My housekeeper will prepare something warm for you to drink." "I don't have a coat," Lily replied softly, aware of how her simple clothes contrasted with the luxurious environment. The navy blue dress she wore was the best she owned, but still seemed inadequate in that setting. Samuel studied her with a look that made her feel like a specimen under a microscope. She could feel the weight of his analysis, the way he catalogued every detail of her appearance, looking for, what? Similarities to her mother? Signs of weakness that he could exploit? "How old are you?" he asked abruptly. 18. "How long has your mother been dead?" 2 years, Lily's voice faltered slightly. "Cancer." Samuel nodded, as if confirming information he already possessed. He turned and walked toward what appeared to be a library, expecting her to follow. Lily obeyed, her steps echoing on the marble floor. The library was a sanctuary of knowledge and luxury, shelves that rose from floor to ceiling, filled with books in various languages, leather armchairs that seemed to embrace whoever sat in them, a fireplace where the fire crackled cheerfully, creating a welcoming contrast to the coldness of the house's owner. "Sit down," said Samuel, pointing to one of the armchairs. He himself remained standing, leaning against the bookshelf, his arms crossed over his chest. "Show me the letter." Lily hesitated. The letter was her only bargaining chip, the only thing that had brought her here. If she handed it over now, what would prevent her from being expelled as soon as he finished reading it? "First, I need to know if you really knew my mother," she said, surprised by her own courage. A bitter smile curved Samuel's lips. "Smart. Bianca taught you well." The confirmation hit Lily like a punch to the stomach. Her mother really had known this man. There were stories between them, secrets that Lily couldn't even imagine. What was she like? Lily couldn't avoid the question, her voice coming out lower than she intended. Samuel studied her for a long moment, as if deciding how much he would reveal. "Beautiful," he finally said. "Intelligent. Dangerous." "Dangerous? Women like your mother are always dangerous. They make men like me believe in things that we should know are impossible." There was a bitterness in his voice that made Lily understand that the story between Samuel and Bianca had ended badly, very badly. "Did she love you?" The question escaped before Lily could stop it. Samuel's eyes narrowed. "Your mother loved many things, money, power, status. As for love," he shrugged, "that's something you'll have to discover in the letter." Lily felt tears burn in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall, not in front of this man who spoke of her mother as if she were an object, a commodity that had lost its value. "You're being cruel," she said, her voice trembling with contained anger. "I'm being honest, there's a difference." Samuel moved away from the bookshelf and walked to the window, looking at the mountainous landscape outside. The rain had lessened, but the sky remained laden with dark clouds. "How old was your mother when she died?" he asked without turning. "Around 42. Young." There was something like regret in his voice. "Did she suffer?" The question caught Lily off guard. There was an unexpected gentleness in it, as if for a moment Samuel's cold mask had slipped. "Yes," Lily admitted. "A lot. But she was strong. Even at the end, when she could barely speak, she refused to take stronger medications for the pain. She said she needed to keep her mind clear." "For what?" "To tell me things. About the past. About you." Samuel turned. Slowly, his blue eyes fixed on Lily's face. "What did she say about me?" Lily swallowed hard. "That you were the only man she truly loved, and that it almost destroyed her." The silence that followed was deafening. Samuel remained motionless, like a marble statue, but Lily could see the storm unfolding behind his eyes. "And what else?" His voice came out hoarse. "That you blamed her for something she didn't do, that she tried to explain but you wouldn't listen. And you believe that?" "I believe that my mother wasn't perfect, but she wasn't a liar." Samuel laughed, a humorless sound that echoed through the library. "Your mother was many things, Lily, but above all she was a survivor, and survivors do what is necessary to survive, including lying." "Then why did you receive me? If you believe she was a liar, why didn't you send me away?" The question silenced him. Samuel approached again, stopping a few feet from her. Up close, Lily could see the fine lines around his eyes, the marks that life had left on his face. She could smell the subtle scent of his cologne, expensive and masculine. "Because," he said slowly, "for 24 years I've wondered if I made the biggest mistake of my life. And you might have the answer. The letter might have the answer." "Then, show me the damn letter." Lily hesitated for another moment, then took the envelope from the pocket of her dress. The paper was yellowed with age, and the name Samuel Blackwood was written in Bianca's delicate handwriting. With trembling hands, she extended the envelope to him. Samuel took it as if it were a venomous snake. His fingers traced the name written on the front, and for a moment Lily saw something like pain pass over his face. "Leave," he said abruptly. "What?" "Leave the room. I'll read this alone." "But leave!" The shout echoed through the library, making Lily jump. "Find Mrs. Rivera in the kitchen. She'll take care of you." Lily rose with trembling legs. There was fury in Samuel's eyes, but also something more vulnerable, fear perhaps, or desperation. She walked towards the door, but stopped at the threshold. "Mr. Blackwood." "What?" He didn't raise his eyes from the letter. "My mother also suffered when she spoke of you. Perhaps you both hurt each other more than you imagine." Lily left before he could respond, leaving Samuel alone with the ghosts of the past and a letter. That could change everything. Samuel waited until he was sure she had moved away before opening the envelope. His hands trembled slightly when he unfolded the paper, immediately recognizing the familiar handwriting. "My dear Samuel," the letter began, and he could already hear Bianca's voice in his mind, soft and melodious as it had always been. "If you're reading this, it means I've died and Lily had enough courage to seek you out. She is everything most precious to me in the world, and now I must entrust her to you, even knowing that you have every reason to hate me. I know you believe I betrayed you, that I stole money from the construction company and disappeared like a thief in the night. All these years I've carried the weight of your distrust, knowing that I would never have the chance to explain the truth. The truth, Samuel, is that I discovered something I shouldn't have discovered. I saw documents I shouldn't have seen, and when I tried to tell you, it was too late. Someone had already planted evidence that would incriminate me. I didn't steal anything, my love. I was being used as a scapegoat by someone much more powerful than both of us. Someone who knew exactly how to manipulate the situation so that you would doubt me. Emily." Samuel stopped reading, his breathing becoming irregular. The name of his daughter in Bianca's letter was like a dagger to the heart. "Emily didn't die in an accident, Samuel. I was there that day. I saw what happened. And that's why I had to flee. That's why I could never come back. Because I knew that if I stayed, I would be killed too. I keep with me a cassette tape with a conversation I accidentally recorded that day. A conversation that proves that Emily's death was planned. I buried this tape in the garden of your house, in Boston, beneath the white rosebush that you planted in her memory. Lily knows nothing about any of this. For her, you are just a name in a letter. A man who can help her escape a life she didn't choose. She is promised in marriage to a man she doesn't know, part of an agreement that the Mother Superior made to save the convent from bankruptcy. Protect her, Samuel. She is innocent of all the sins of the past, and perhaps through her, you can find the peace that I could never give you. With all the love that still remains in my broken heart, Bianca." Samuel let the letter fall to the floor, his legs failing. He let himself fall into the nearest armchair, his face buried in his hands. Emily. His little Emily, who died at the age of 5 in a fall down the stairs. An accident, everyone said. A terrible, unforeseen accident. But if Bianca was right, if there was a tape that proved otherwise. The sound of soft footsteps made him raise his head. Lily was at the door carrying a tray with tea. She had changed out of her wet dress into something that Mrs. Rivera must have found for her, a simple white blouse and a dark skirt that made her eyes shine like stars. "I thought you might want something warm," she said hesitantly. Samuel studied her, looking for similarities to Bianca. They were there, the delicate curve of her neck, the way she tilted her head when she was insecure. But there were differences too. Lily had a silent strength that Bianca had never possessed, a serenity that came from having grown up in seclusion, away from the temptations and corruptions of the world. "Thank you," he said, accepting the cup she offered him. Lily sat in the opposite armchair, her own hands wrapping around the cup as if she needed the warmth. "You read the letter?" It wasn't a question. "I did." "And?" Samuel took a sip of the tea, buying time to organize his thoughts. "Your mother made some serious allegations." "She was dying, Mr. Blackwood. She had no reason to lie. We all have reasons to lie, especially when we're dying. We want to be remembered better than we deserve." Lily studied him with eyes that seemed too old for her young face. "Do you really believe that?" "I believe that your mother was a complex woman who made questionable decisions. And me, what do you believe about me?" The question caught him off guard. Samuel studied her, noticing how the firelight danced in her dark hair, how her small hands held the cup with delicacy. She was young, vulnerable, completely out of her element. He should send her away before she got hurt. But there was something in the way she looked at him, without fear, despite her youth. That intrigued him. "I believe that you are a young woman who finds herself in an impossible situation, carrying secrets that you don't fully understand. And will you help me?" Samuel put the cup aside and leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "That depends on what you expect me to do." "I don't know," Lily admitted. "My mother said you were the key, but she didn't explain the key to what. Perhaps to discover the truth about the past, or perhaps to condemn us both to the same fate that destroyed your mother and me." The fire crackled in the fireplace, filling the silence that followed. Outside, night had fallen completely, turning the windows into dark mirrors that reflected the intimate scene in the library. "May I ask a question?" Lily finally said. "You can try." "Emily? Who was Emily?" Samuel stiffened, his cold mask sliding back into place. "No one you need to know about." "Did my mother mention that name in the letter?" "Your mother mentioned many things, not all relevant." But Lily was more observant than Samuel expected. She saw how his fists clenched. When she said the name, how a shadow of pain passed through his eyes. "She was your daughter," she said softly. "Emily was your daughter." The silence that followed was so heavy that it seemed to have physical substance. Samuel got up abruptly, walking to the window as if he needed physical distance to maintain control. "You know nothing about my daughter." "I know that she died, and I know that it destroyed you." "What you know," said Samuel, his voice dangerously low, "is only what a dying woman chose to tell you. Stories told out of guilt or desperation are rarely true. Maybe, but the pain in your voice when you say her name is real." Samuel turned to face her, and Lily saw something wild in his eyes, something that made her heart race. "Be careful. Girl, you're treading on dangerous territory." "I've been in dangerous territory since the moment I decided to leave the convent." "And why did you leave? What was so terrible about the life you had that you needed to seek out a stranger?" Lily lowered her eyes to her hands. "They wanted me to marry a 58-year-old man, a politician who made generous donations to the convent in exchange for a young and pure wife." The word pure came out loaded with disgust, and Samuel felt an unexpected anger grow in his chest. "And you ran away." "I ran, with only the money I could save by doing embroidery and my mother's letter. To come to a man you don't know in a foreign country, with no guarantee that you would be well received." "Yes, that was incredibly stupid. Or brave." Samuel laughed, a sound without humor. "There's a very thin line between courage and stupidity, Lily, and you may have just crossed it." She raised her eyes to meet his, and Samuel saw something in them that made him stop. It wasn't fear as it should be. It was defiance. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Are you going to send me away?" Samuel studied her for a long moment. The sensible thing would be to put her on the first flight back to Boston and forget she had ever existed. But there was something in the way she looked at him, something in the way she had pronounced Emily's name without fear, that prevented him from making the obvious decision. I'm going to make a proposal, he said finally. What kind of proposal? Stay here for 30 days, 1 month. During that time, we'll investigate your mother's allegations. If we discover that she was telling the truth, I'll help you build a new life away from the arranged marriage. And if we discover that she was lying, Samuel's eyes turned glacial. Then you will have learned a valuable lesson about trusting the wrong people. Lily studied him, looking for clues about his true intentions. There was something dangerous in the proposal, something that she couldn't fully identify. Why would you do this? Because, said Samuel, his voice getting lower, for 24 years I've lived with doubt, and maybe it's time to discover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. And during these 30 days, you'll stay here under my protection. You'll have everything you need. In exchange for what? Samuel smiled, and for the first time since she had arrived, there was something predatory in the expression. In exchange for absolute honesty. No lies, no half-truths. Everything you know about your mother, about the past, about Emily. I already told you I don't know anything about Emily. Then you'll learn. There was something in the way he said this that made Lily tremble. Not from cold, but from an anticipation that she didn't completely understand. Do you accept? Asked Samuel. Lily knew she should say no. She should take her things and leave, find another way to solve her problems. But looking at this man, so clearly broken inside despite his immaculate facade, she heard herself saying, I accept. And with these two simple words, she sealed a fate that neither of them could predict. The first rays of sunlight passed through the heavy curtains of the guest room, waking Lily from a restless sleep. She had dreamed of voices whispering in the dark of endless corridors and doors that refused to open. Upon waking for a moment, she didn't know where she was, until reality returned like a cold wave. She was in Samuel Blackwood's mansion, a man who looked at her as if she were simultaneously his salvation and his curse. The room that Mrs. Rivera had prepared for her was larger than the entire dormitory at the convent. Wallpaper in shades, of cream and gold, antique furniture that probably cost more than she had seen in her entire life, and a window that offered a spectacular view of the snow-covered Rockies. It was beautiful and haunting at the same time, like everything in that house. A soft knock on the door made her sit up in bed, pulling the robe she had found in the closet. Come in, she said, expecting to see the kind housekeeper who had taken care of her the night before. Instead, Samuel appeared at the door, already impeccably dressed despite the early hour. He wore a white shirt that contrasted with his tanned skin and dark pants that accentuated his imposing height. In his hands, he carried a breakfast tray. Good morning, he said, his voice formal but not hostile. I thought you might like to have breakfast before we begin. Begin what? Lily asked, aware of how she must look with her hair disheveled and wearing only the robe. Our investigation. Samuel placed the tray on the table near the window. If we're going to discover the truth about the past, we need to be methodical. Lily stood up, adjusting the robe around her body. She could feel Samuel's eyes on her, an intensity that made her skin tingle. It wasn't exactly a predatory look, but there was something in it that reminded her that she was alone with a man she barely knew. You should have knocked before entering, she said, trying to keep her voice firm. I did knock. You said to come in. I thought it was Mrs. Rivera. Samuel raised an eyebrow. Next time specify. This is my house, Lily. I don't usually ask permission to enter my own rooms. There was a tone of challenge in his voice that made Lily understand that this was a demonstration of power. He was reminding her that she was in his territory under his rules. I understand, she said calmly. Next time, we'll lock the door. For a moment, Samuel seemed surprised by her response. Then, something like approval shone in his eyes. Get dressed, he said. We'll meet in the library in half an hour. He turned to leave, but stopped at the door. Lily. Yes? There are clothes in the wardrobe. Mrs. Rivera provided some things last night. After he left, Lily opened the wardrobe and was breathless. There were dresses, blouses, skirts, even delicate lingerie, all in her size. The pieces were simple but elegant, clearly expensive. For a moment she wondered how Samuel had known her measurements, until she realized that he probably had experience in evaluating women. The thought bothered her more than it should have. She chose a simple navy blue dress and low shoes, trying to maintain a respectable appearance. In the mirror, she could see that she still looked too young, too inexperienced to be in this game. But there was determination in her eyes that didn't exist when she had arrived the night before. Samuel was waiting for her in the library, standing before a wall covered with maps and old photographs. When she entered, he turned, and Lily noticed that there were dark circles under his eyes, as if he too hadn't slept well. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, surprising herself with her own audacity. "I rarely can," he responded without emotion. "Coffee?" He pointed to a table where there was a silver coffee pot and 2 cups. Lily nodded, observing him as he served coffee for both of them. His movements were precise, controlled, as if everything in his life were choreographed to hide any vulnerability. "Last night, I read your mother's letter several times," he said, handing her the cup. "There are specific details that we need. To verify, what kind of details?" Samuel walked to one of the photographs on the wall. It was an image of a large house in colonial style with elaborate gardens in the background. "This was my house in Boston," he said, "where Emily lived with me." Lily approached, studying the photograph. The house was imposing, but there was something welcoming about it that the current mansion didn't possess. "It's beautiful." It was. Samuel's voice got lower. "I sold it after Emily died. I couldn't live there anymore. My mother mentioned a white rose bush in the garden. She said a tape was buried there." Samuel nodded. "I planted that rose bush the week after Emily's funeral, in her memory." He paused, as if the words were too difficult to pronounce. "If your mother is right, if there really is a tape buried there, you would have to go back to Boston to look for it." "Yes, but not alone." He turned to face her. "You would come with me." The declaration caught her off guard. "Why?" "Because you knew your mother better than anyone. If there are clues to follow, you might recognize them when others couldn't." There was logic in the proposal, but Lily felt that there was more. Something in the way Samuel looked at her, as if she were a crucial piece of a puzzle that he had been trying to solve for decades. "When would we leave?" "This afternoon. My jet is available." "This afternoon?" Lily almost dropped the coffee cup. "But I just arrived, and each day we lose is one more day that those responsible for Emily's death remain unpunished." There was an intensity in his voice that made Lily understand that this wasn't just about discovering the truth. It was about revenge. "Mr. Blackwood," she said carefully, "if we discover that your daughter really was murdered, what do you intend to do with that information?" Samuel's eyes turned glacial. "That's none of your business. If I'm involved in this investigation, it becomes my business." They stared at each other for a long moment, and Lily could feel the tension growing in the air. There was something dangerous about Samuel when the subject was Emily, something that made her question if she had any idea what she was getting into. "You're afraid of me," he said, not as a question, but as an observation. "Should I be?" "Perhaps." He took a step toward her, and Lily had to make an effort not to back away. "I'm a man who has lost everything he loved, Lily. That makes me unpredictable. And dangerous. Especially dangerous." But instead of moving away, Lily took a step toward him, raising her chin defiantly. "And you think a girl who grew up in a convent knows nothing about danger?" Samuel seemed genuinely surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean, do you know why?" "They sent me to the convent so young. I imagined that your mother wanted you to have a religious education." Lily laughed, a bitter sound that didn't match her young appearance. "My mother sent me there because she was afraid that I would end up like her, involved with dangerous men." "And you did end up like that." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with multiple meanings. Lily could feel the heat radiating from Samuel's body, could see the way his eyes fixed on her lips for a moment before returning to her eyes. "Perhaps," she said softly, "danger is exactly what I'm looking for." Something changed in Samuel's expression. The controlled mask slipped, for a moment, revealing something wild underneath. He raised his hand as if he were going to touch her face, but stopped midway. "You don't know what you're talking about." "No? Then teach me." The provocation came out before Lily could stop it, and she saw the immediate effect on Samuel. His eyes narrowed, and he took another step toward her, so close now that she could feel his warm breath against her skin. "Be careful what you wish for, girl," he murmured, his voice husky. "You might discover that you're not prepared for the consequences." "And if I am?" Samuel studied her for a long moment, as if he were trying to decipher an enigma. Then abruptly he moved away, the cold mask sliding back into place. "Prepare your things," he said, his voice returning to a formal tone. "We leave in 3 hours." After he left, Lily remained standing in the middle of the library, her heart beating irregularly. There was something happening between them, something that went beyond the investigation into the past, a dangerous attraction that both seemed to be fighting against. She knew she should be more cautious. Samuel had made it clear that he was a dangerous man, and she was too young and too inexperienced to deal with men like him. But there was something in the intensity of his pain, in the way he spoke of Emily, that touched something deep inside her. During her childhood at the convent, Lily had learned to read people through silences and looks, and what she saw in Samuel wasn't just a cruel or manipulative man. He was a broken man, consumed by pain and guilt, who had built walls around his heart to protect himself. Perhaps he was exactly the type of man her mother had warned her to avoid, or perhaps he was the type of man who needed someone brave enough to break through his defenses. The flight to Boston was tense and silent. Samuel worked on his laptop for most of the time, while Lily looked out the window, watching the clouds pass by. From time to time she observed him discreetly, noticing how he furrowed his brow when concentrated, how his long fingers moved over the keyboard with surgical precision. There was an elegance in all his movements that spoke of years of self-discipline. Even relaxed, he maintained a perfect posture, as if he were always conscious of how he was being perceived. "Nervous?" he asked when they began to descend, noticing how she gripped the arms of the chair. "A little. I'd never flown before yesterday." "And yesterday was your first time leaving Boston?" "My first time leaving the state where I was born." Samuel studied her with renewed interest. "Your life was very sheltered." "Protection can be a prison," said Lily, repeating something she had heard her mother say once. Bianca used to say, "Toletta." She would talk about it sometimes, about how certain choices we make to protect ourselves end up limiting us. And what choices did she make that limited her? Lily hesitated, pondering how much she should reveal. "She never married after she had me. She never allowed herself to love again. She said that she couldn't trust her own judgment when it came to men." She was right. Was she? Or was she just afraid of getting hurt again? Samuel didn't answer, but Lily could see that her words had hit the mark. He too had closed himself off to love after losing Emily. He too had chosen protection instead of vulnerability. Boston welcomed them with its familiar chaos. The cold, the noise, the frenetic energy of the city contrasted drastically with the serenity of the Rockies. Samuel had rented a car, and as they navigated through the heavy traffic, Lily wondered when was the last time he had been here. "How long has it been since you've been here?" she asked. 5 years. And you? Have you been to Boston before?" "Never." "It's intense." "Emily adored this city," said Samuel, and it was the first time he had mentioned his daughter without the pain in his voice being overwhelming. "She said she wanted to be an architect like me when she grew up, to build beautiful buildings that would make people happy. She liked to build things. Always. Lego, blocks, sand castles, anything that she could stack and create." A ghost of a smile passed over his lips. "I used to bring technical drawings home and she would sit next to me, making her own projects with crayons." It was the first time that Lily had seen him speak of Emily with anything beyond pain. There was love there, pure and intense, the type of love that only a father can feel for a daughter. She seemed to be a special girl. She was, The pain returned to his voice. She was everything to me. The house was in an elegant neighborhood, hidden behind high gates and lush gardens. Samuel stopped the car outside, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. "You don't have to do this," said Lily softly. "I can look alone." "No." His voice came out harsher than he intended. "I need to do this." The current house belonged to a family that had bought it from Samuel years before. He had called during the flight, explaining that he needed to access the garden for personal reasons. Money had made the conversation much easier than it would have been otherwise. The new owners were kind but curious, offering coffee as Samuel and Lily walked through the garden that had once been his refuge. Much had changed: new flower beds, a swimming pool where there once had been a playground. But the white rosebush was still there, larger and more exuberant than in Samuel's memory. "Emily used to play here," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "She would make sandcastles in that bed over there, organize picnics for her dolls under the shade of the rosebush." Lily could easily imagine her, a small girl with her father's eyes, laughing as she played in the safe garden of her home. The image made her heart ache. Where exactly did your mother say the tape would be buried? Under the rosebush, but she didn't specify where. Samuel knelt beside the plant, his hands carefully searching among the roots. Lily joined him, and together they began to delicately dig around the base of the rosebush. It was Lily who found it. Her fingers touched something plastic, buried about 8 inches below the surface. Carefully, she removed a plastic bag containing an old cassette tape. Samuel took the bag with trembling hands, as if he were holding a bomb about to explode. After all these years, does it still work? There's only one way to find out. They returned to the hotel where Samuel had reserved a suite. Along the way, he had stopped at an electronics store to buy an old cassette player. Now sitting in the elegant room of the suite, they looked at the device as if it were a loaded weapon. "Are you sure you want to do this?" asked Lily. Samuel nodded, but she could see the fear in his eyes. With hands that trembled slightly, he inserted the tape and pressed play. First there was only static, then distant voices that gradually became clearer. Bianca's voice was young, nervous. "I can't keep pretending that I didn't see anything, Robert. You know that I saw the documents." A male voice responded, irritated. "You didn't see anything, Bianca. And if you know what's good for you, you'll forget anything you think you saw." "But the children?" "Robert, if this gets out, how many families will be destroyed?" "The families that matter will be protected. As for the others," the man gave an audible shrug, "you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs." "And Emily? Isn't she important?" The mention of his daughter's name made Samuel stiffen. "Emily is a problem," said Robert coldly. "A witness who shouldn't exist. She's 5 years old. She doesn't understand anything she saw. Today she's 5 years old, but she'll grow up. And one day she might remember things that would be better forgotten. You can't be serious. I'm very serious, and you should be too. There are ways to make accidents seem natural, Bianca, for children and for young women who know too much." The hijab recording continued for a few more minutes, detailing a scheme of corruption in public works that Samuel hadn't even imagined existed. But what left him frozen was the casual discussion about eliminating his daughter, as if she were just an inconvenient obstacle. When the tape ended, the silence in the room was deafening. Samuel had turned completely pale, his hands trembling as he held the edge of the table. "Robert," he murmured. Robert Taylor, my partner at the time. He ordered Emily's death? From what we just heard, yes." The word came out as a strangled whisper. Lily approached him, instinctively offering comfort. "Samuel, 24 years, he said, his voice growing in volume and fury. "For 24 years I believed that my daughter had died in an accident. 24 years of guilt, thinking that if I had been a better father, more attentive." He stood up abruptly, walking to the window that gave a view of the city. Lily could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands closed into fists. "And your mother," he said without turning around. "Your mother knew. She knew and didn't tell me. She tried. The letter said that she tried to tell you, but it was too late." Too late, because she waited, because she decided that it was more important to protect her own skin than to save an innocent child. The accusation echoed through the room and Lily felt anger grow in her chest. "You heard the recording," she said, standing up too. "He threatened to kill her too. She was afraid. And I didn't have the right to know. I didn't have the right to protect my own daughter." "Of course you had. But judging her now, after she's dead, after having carried this secret for decades, is that fair?" Samuel turned to face her, and there was fire in his eyes. "Fair? Nothing about this is fair, Lily. My daughter is dead because people I trusted decided that she was disposable. And now what will you do? Is Robert still alive?" "Oh yes, very alive, very prosperous, very respected." There was something in the way he said this that made Lily tremble. "Samuel, what are you thinking?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he walked to her, stopping so close that she could see the golden particles in his blue eyes. "You asked on the plane if you were prepared for the consequences," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "This is one of them. Discovering that your mother could have saved my daughter and chose not to do so. She was afraid. And I was in agony. Do you have any idea what it's like to lose a child, Lily? What it's like to live every day knowing that you failed in the only thing that really mattered?" Tears began to stream down Samuel's face, and Lily saw for the first time the broken man behind the controlled facade. Without thinking, she raised her hands to touch his face, wiping away the tears with her thumbs. "You didn't fail," she said softly. "You were betrayed by people you trusted." "Your mother." "My mother was human. She made mistakes. But she also carried this weight for the rest of her life. Do you think it was easy for her to know what had happened and not be able to do anything?" Samuel covered her hands with his, holding them against his face. "Why do you defend her?" "Because I loved her, and because I understand that sometimes people make wrong choices for the right reasons." They remained like this for a long moment, connected by shared pain and mutual understanding of the complexity of forgiveness. When Samuel finally spoke, his voice was hoarse with emotion. "I don't know if I can forgive her." "You don't have to, not yet, but maybe you can try to understand." Samuel closed his eyes, absorbing the comfort of Lily's delicate hands on his face. There was something in her gentleness that was beginning to melt the frozen anger that he had carried for so long. "What do I do now?" he asked, and for the first time since she had met him, he seemed vulnerable, human. "Now you decide if you want Emily's death to have meaning," said Lily. "If you want justice or just revenge. And if I want both, then you'll have to choose which is more important." Samuel opened his eyes, studying her face. There was wisdom there that didn't match her age, an understanding of human nature that came from having observed people for years in silence. "How did you get so wise?" he asked. "Growing up in a place where talking was discouraged, I learned to listen and to observe." "And what do you observe when you look at me?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications. Lily could feel the warmth of Samuel's hands on hers, could see the intensity in his eyes, the way he looked at her as if she were simultaneously his salvation and his downfall. "I see a man who built a fortress around his heart," she said softly. "But I also see that the walls have cracks. And that scares you? Should it?" Instead of answering, Samuel slowly lowered his head, giving her time to move away if she wanted. But Lily didn't move. When his lips touched hers, it was as if something had ignited inside her, a flame that she didn't even know existed. The kiss was gentle at first, almost hesitant, as if he were testing her reactions. But when Lily responded, her arms wrapping around his neck, something primitive took control. The kiss deepened, becoming more urgent, more desperate. When they finally separated, both were breathless. Samuel rested his forehead on hers, his eyes closed as if he were fighting an internal battle. "That was a mistake," he murmured. "Was it? You're 18 years old, Lily. I'm 52. You're the daughter of a woman that I still don't know if I can forgive. And that changes how you feel right now." Samuel opened his eyes and she could see the war being waged there. Desire against responsibility, need against reason. It makes everything more complicated. Maybe complicated is better than empty." Her words echoed in the silence, and Samuel moved away slowly, his hands sliding from hers with reluctance. "I need to think," he said, "about Robert, about Emily, about everything." Lily nodded, understanding that he needed space to process everything they had discovered. "I'll take a shower. I'll leave you alone with your thoughts." She headed to the bedroom but stopped at the door. "Samuel." "Yes?" "Emily would have been proud of the man you've become, even with all your flaws." After she left, Samuel remained, standing in the middle of the room, the weight of the revelation and the unexpected kiss pressing on him like a mountain. The tape had changed everything. His understanding of the past, his perception of Bianca, his own guilt about Emily's death. But it was the kiss that shook him most deeply. It had been years since he had felt anything besides anger and pain. And now in this girl, because no matter how mature she was still too young for him, he had awakened something that he judged dead. He picked up the phone and dialed a number that he hadn't used in years. When the familiar voice answered, Samuel felt his jaw tighten. "Robert, it's Samuel Blackwood. I need to see you. We have pending matters to resolve." On the other end of the line, there was a long pause before Robert responded, his voice cautious. "Samuel." "What a surprise. I thought you had moved permanently to Colorado." "I did, but I'm back in Boston for a few days, and I discovered something interesting about our old partnership." Another pause. "What kind of thing?" "The kind of thing that's better discussed in person. Tonight, at the bar of the Waldorf Astoria, at 9. "Samuel, I don't know if—" "At 9, Robert. Don't make me come looking for you." Samuel hung up before Robert could respond. At least, now he knew that the man was still in Boston, still prosperous, still free. That would change very soon. But first, he needed to decide what to do with Lily, and with the unexpected feelings that she had awakened in him. The bar of the Waldorf. Astoria was buzzing with the discreet elegance of the Boston elite. Samuel arrived punctually at 9, choosing a table in the most reserved corner, from where he could observe the entrance. He had ordered a double whiskey, but had barely touched it. His fingers drummed nervously on the table while his mind processed the revelations of the last few hours. The tape was kept in his inside pocket, along with a copy that he had arranged to make during the afternoon. It was his insurance policy, his weapon against a man who had ordered the death of an innocent child. Robert Taylor appeared at 9:15, as impeccable as Samuel remembered. Tall, perfectly combed silver hair, Italian suit that cost more than many people's annual salary. But there was something different in his eyes, a caution that didn't exist when they were partners, when Samuel still believed that he could trust him. "Samuel." Robert extended his hand, which Samuel deliberately ignored. After an awkward moment, Robert sat in the opposite chair. "You haven't changed at all." "You have changed," Samuel responded coldly, studying the face of the man who had ordered his daughter's death. "You seem prosperous." "Business has been good." Robert signaled to the waiter. "Scotch whiskey, the best you have." He turned back to Samuel. "So what pending matters are these?" Samuel didn't respond immediately. Instead, he removed the recording from his pocket and placed it on the table. Robert looked at the small device with confusion. "What is this?" "A conversation that you had 24 years ago, with a woman named Bianca Martinez." The color completely drained from Robert's face, his eyes fixed on the tape as if it were a venomous snake ready to attack. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No?" Samuel pressed the play button and Bianca's young voice filled the space between them. "But the children, Robert, if this gets out, how many families will be destroyed?" Robert moved quickly, trying to turn off the device, but Samuel was faster, pulling it back. "I'm not finished," said Samuel, his voice dangerously low. The recording continued, each word a stab in Samuel's heart, each threat from Robert echoing. In the elegant bar like a death sentence. "Emily is a problem, a witness who shouldn't exist." When Robert's voice in the recording mentioned accidents that could be arranged for inconvenient children, the real Robert turned even paler. Samuel turned off the device and leaned forward, his blue eyes burning with contained fury. 24. Years, Robert. 24 years since you had my daughter killed. Samuel, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I understand that you discovered that Emily had seen documents that compromised your corruption scheme. I understand that you decided that a 5-year-old child was a threat to your freedom. And I understand that you ordered her to be eliminated. Robert looked nervously around, checking if anyone was listening. The bar remained busy, the conversations of other clients masking their discussion. You can't prove anything. I can. Prove everything. Samuel tapped lightly on the tape. This recording is evidence enough to destroy your career, your reputation, your freedom. The police would be very interested in reopening the case of Emily's death after hearing this. What do you want? The question came out as a desperate whisper, and Samuel felt a dark satisfaction in seeing the powerful man reduced to begging. Want the truth. I want names. I want to know exactly how my daughter died. Robert swallowed hard, his hands trembling slightly as he picked up the glass of whiskey that the waiter had brought. It was quick, he finally said. She didn't suffer. How? The word came out as a low roar, making Robert flinch. Medication, added to her hot milk before bedtime. She simply didn't wake up. Afterward, we arranged for it to look like she had fallen down the stairs during the night. Samuel closed his eyes, the image of Emily being poisoned as she slept, burning in his mind like acid. His daughter, his little architect with crayons, murdered because of the greed of unscrupulous men. Who did this? A man I knew, someone discreet. Name. He's dead, Samuel. He died 10 years ago. Cancer. Convenient. It's the truth. Samuel opened his eyes, and Robert trembled before the cold fury he saw there. And Bianca? Why did she run away? Because she knew too much. Because she was in the house that night and might have seen something she shouldn't have. And you let her live. She disappeared before we took any action. And then we discovered that she was pregnant. We decided it was better to leave her in peace as long as she remained silent. Pregnant by whom? Robert hesitated. We didn't know about her, but we presumed it was yours. The world seemed to stop. Samuel stared at Robert, trying to process what he had just heard. Mine? You two were close at that time. She worked in your house, took care of Emily. It was obvious that there was something between you. You're saying that Lily is your daughter? Robert nodded. I thought you knew. Samuel stood up abruptly, the chair almost falling backward. Lily was his daughter. The young woman for whom he had developed impossible feelings, whom he had kissed a few hours before, was his own daughter. Are you sure? Bianca was never with anyone else during that period, and look at her, Samuel. She has your eyes. Samuel left the bar without saying another word, leaving Robert alone with his guilt and his fear. He needed to go back to the hotel, needed to confront Lily with the truth, needed to understand how he hadn't noticed the resemblance. But when he arrived at the suite, she wasn't there. There was a note on the table, written in the delicate handwriting that he now recognized as strangely familiar. Samuel, I went out for a walk to organize my thoughts. I'll be back soon, Elle. He crumpled the paper in his hands, frustration and confusion threatening to consume him. How hadn't he noticed? How had he allowed his feelings for her to develop if she was his own daughter? He poured himself a double whiskey and walked to the window, looking at the city lights that spread like diamonds in the darkness. 24 years searching for answers, and when he finally found them, they brought only more pain. Lily returned, 2 hours later, finding him still standing at the window, the empty glass in his hands. She had bought a new dress, something simple but elegant in a dark blue tone that enhanced her eyes, the same blue eyes that he saw in the mirror every day. How was the meeting? She asked, placing the shopping bags on the sofa. Samuel turned, slowly to face her, studying every detail of her face with new eyes, the curve of her nose, the line of her jaw, the way she tilted her head when she was curious. How had he been so blind? Enlightening, he said, his voice tense. Did he confirm? What was on the tape? He confirmed many things. There was something in the way he looked at her that made Lily feel uncomfortable. It was as if he were seeing a ghost. Samuel, what happened? Sit down, Lily. We need to talk. The formal tone in his voice frightened her. She sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands interlaced in her lap. Robert told me something about your mother, Samuel began, struggling to find the right words. Something that changes everything. What did he say? That Bianca was pregnant when she fled, pregnant with my child. The silence that followed was deafening. Lily stared at him, trying to process his words. That's not possible. Isn't... My mother would have told me. She would have... Your mother kept many secrets, Lily. This might have been just one more. Lily stood up abruptly, walking to the opposite window. No, this can't be true. Look at me, said Samuel softly. Really look. You never noticed the resemblance. She turned slowly and for the first time really studied him. The blue eyes, the strong line of the jaw, the way he gestured when he spoke. Traits that she had always assumed were just coincidence. Oh my God, she whispered, bringing her hands to her face. That's why Robert let your mother live. Because he knew she was carrying my child, and that gave him leverage over me. But she never said, in all these years, she never... Maybe she thought it was better that way. Maybe she thought I wouldn't accept you, given the circumstances. Lily felt her legs fail and allowed herself to fall into the nearest armchair. This means that Emily was my sister. Half-sister, yes. And I never knew her. I never even knew she existed until yesterday. Samuel approached her, stopping a few feet away. Lily. No. She raised her hand, preventing him from coming closer. Don't say anything now. I need to process this. I understand. It's a lot to absorb. It's more than that, Samuel. She raised her eyes to meet his, and there were tears shining there. You kissed me today, and I liked it. How does that make me feel now? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with guilt and confusion. You didn't know, said Samuel softly. Neither of us knew. But now we know, and I can't. Simply pretend that I don't know. Samuel sat in the opposite armchair, the weight of the revelation pressing on both of them like a mountain. What do we do now? He asked. I don't know. I need time to think, to understand what this means. Lily, I want you to know that regardless of everything, you are my daughter, and I... No. She stood up again, moving away from him. Please, don't say that you... Love me as a daughter, not now, not after... After what? After I fell in love with you. The words came out as a broken whisper, but they echoed in the room like a scream. Samuel felt his heart stop for a moment. Lily. I know I'm young. I know I'm inexperienced. But from the moment I saw you, I felt something that I had never felt before. And now to discover that you're my father. She shook her head, the tears finally streaming down. How is this possible? How can fate be so cruel? Samuel stood up, every parental instinct awakening upon seeing her crying. But when he took a step in her direction, she backed away. Don't touch me, please. I can't handle this right now. Where will you go? I don't know. Maybe home. Maybe somewhere else entirely. Lily, you can't simply run away. We have to deal with this. Deal with this, she laughed bitterly. How am I supposed to deal with the fact that I fell in love with my own father? How am I supposed to deal with the fact that my mother lied to me about everything? She was trying to protect you. Protect me from what? From the truth? From my own father? Samuel had no answer for this. How could he explain decisions that Bianca had made decades before, in circumstances that neither of them could fully imagine? Perhaps, he said carefully, she thought it was better for you to grow up without knowing about me, about Emily, about this whole dangerous world. And instead, she left me to grow up without any father at all, without any family besides her. You had the nuns. The nuns weren't family, they were kind prison guards. The room phone rang, cutting the tense conversation. Samuel hesitated, then answered. "Hello." "Mr. Blackwood." It was the voice of his secretary in Paris. "Sorry to bother you, but there's an urgent situation here that requires your attention." "What kind of situation?" "Problems with the resort in Santorini. It seems there was an accident, and the media is starting to ask questions." Samuel closed his eyes. Even thousands of miles away, business continued to demand his attention. "I'll be there tomorrow," he said. "Sir, there's one more thing. We received a call from someone asking about a young American woman who would be traveling with you. They said it was an urgent family matter." Samuel stiffened. "Who was it?" "They didn't identify themselves, but they specifically mentioned the name Lily." "I understand, thank you." Samuel hung up, his mind racing. Who could be looking for Lily, and how did they know she was with him? "Who was it?" asked Lily. "My secretary. I need to return to Paris. Tomorrow." "Great, that gives me time to decide what to do." "Lily, someone is looking for you, someone who knew you were with me." The color drained from her face. "What do you mean?" "My secretary received a call from someone asking about you specifically. They said it was an urgent family matter." "Family?" Lily felt her stomach contract. "The Mother Superior. It must be about the marriage." "What marriage?" "The arranged marriage that I ran away from. Maybe they've discovered where I am." Samuel felt anger grow inside him. The idea of someone forcing his daughter, to marry against her will, infuriated him. "No one is going to force you to marry someone you don't want. You don't understand. They have connections, power. If they find me, then we won't let them find you." "Samuel, you can't protect me from everything, especially now, considering what we've discovered." "I can and I will." "You are my daughter, Lily. That changes everything." "Does it change it?" She stared at him. "Or does it complicate it even more?" Before he could respond, the phone rang again. This time, Samuel hesitated longer before answering. "Hello?" "Mr. Blackwood?" An unknown male voice. "I have something that belongs to you." "Who is this?" "Let's say I'm a facilitator, and I have information about the young woman who is traveling with you." Samuel signaled for Lily to remain quiet. "What kind of information?" "The kind that could ruin your reputation if it reached the press. A man of your age, a young woman of her age. People draw conclusions. What do you want?" "A conversation in person tonight." "Where?" "There's a cafe in downtown Boston called the Colonial Coffee House, midnight." The line went dead. Samuel looked at Lily, who had turned pale. "Was it about me?" "Someone knows you're here, and they're trying to use that against us." "Maybe I should leave, go back home." "To marry a man you don't love?" "At least that wouldn't harm you." Samuel approached her, stopping only when she raised her hand in warning. "Lily, listen to me. No matter what we discovered today, no matter how complicated this has become, you are my responsibility now. I won't let anyone hurt you." "And what if I don't want to be your responsibility? What if I want to make my own decisions?" "Then I'll support them. But first, let me deal with whoever is trying to blackmail you." Lily studied him for a long moment. Even with all the confusion and pain of the day's revelations, there was something comforting in Samuel's determined strength. For the first time in her life, someone was willing to fight for her. "All right," she finally said, "but I'm going with you." "Absolutely not." "Samuel, if this is about me, I have the right to be there." "It's dangerous." "My whole life has been dangerous. At least now I know why." Samuel recognized the determination in her eyes, the same determination that he saw in the mirror, that Emily had inherited too. It was a family trait, it seemed. "All right, but we do this my way." "What's your way?" "Cautious, prepared, and with an escape plan." They spent the following hours planning. Samuel made some calls. Organizing backup and security. Lily changed clothes, choosing dark clothes that would allow easy movement if necessary. When they finally left to meet the mysterious blackmailer, both carried the weight of everything that had changed between them. They were no longer two strangers united by curiosity about the past. They were father and daughter, united by blood and tragedy, navigating dangerous waters that could destroy them both. The colonial coffee house was almost empty when they arrived a few minutes before midnight. The man who was waiting for them was exactly what Samuel had imagined: cheap suit, oily hair, the type of person who lived in the shadows doing dirty work for whoever paid the most. "Mr. Blackwood," said the man, standing up when they approached. "And the lovely Miss Martinez. What do you want?" Samuel got straight to the point. Always so efficient, I admire that. The man smiled, revealing yellowed teeth. "Sit down. Let's talk like civilized people." Samuel and Lily sat down, but remained tense, ready to run if necessary. "My client is very interested in Miss Martinez's whereabouts," continued the man. "It seems she has commitments in Boston that she didn't fulfill." "What client?" asked Lily. "Let's say it's someone with a personal interest in your future, someone who made considerable investments in your talents." Samuel felt anger grow. "You're talking about the arranged marriage." "Among other things." The man smiled again. "You know, Mr. Blackwood, your reputation is impeccable. It would be a shame if rumors began to circulate about you and such a impressionable young woman. Get to the point. My client is willing to be reasonable. He simply wants Miss Martinez to return to Boston and fulfill her commitments. In exchange, your association with her will remain private. And if she refuses? Then the photos I have of you two together will become public. You seemed very intimate on the hotel balcony this morning." Lily felt her blood freeze. They had been photographed during a private moment when Samuel had consoled her tears about the revelation of the tape. "How much do you want?" asked Samuel. "It's not a question of money. It's a question of fulfilling contracts." "What contracts?" The man removed a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. "The marriage contract that the Mother Superior signed on behalf of Miss Martinez. Quite legal, I must say." Lily opened the folder with trembling hands. There was her life planned in cold legal details. Marriage to Congressman James Carver, residence in Washington, D.C., children within 2 years. She was treated as property being transferred from one party to another. "This is barbaric," she whispered. "It's business," corrected the man, "and business must be honored." Samuel studied the document, his fury growing with each line he read. "This contract has no legal validity. Lily is of legal age and can make her own decisions." "Perhaps, but Congressman Carver is a powerful man with many connections. It would be unfortunate if he decided to use those connections against you two." The threat hung in the air. Samuel looked at Lily, seeing the fear in her eyes, but also seeing the same determination that had shone in them since the first day. "I need time to think," said Samuel. "Of course. 24 hours. Tomorrow at midnight I want an answer." The man stood up, leaving the folder on the table. "It was a pleasure meeting you. I hope you make the right decision." After he left, Samuel and Lily remained seated in silence, the weight of the situation pressing on them. "He's right," said Lily finally. "Maybe I should go back." "No. Samuel, look at what's happening. We discovered that I'm your daughter, that you were betrayed by your partner, that my entire life was a lie, and now this. Maybe it's time to stop fighting against fate." Samuel held her hands across the table, ignoring the strangeness of touching. His daughter in a comforting way. "Lily, listen to me. I spent 24 years believing that I had failed to protect Emily. I'm not going to fail to protect you too." "But at what cost? Your reputation, your business, your life? My life meant nothing before you appeared at my door. You gave me a reason to fight again." Tears began to stream down Lily's face. "That makes everything even more complicated." "Why?" "Because I wanted you to say that for other reasons. Because even knowing that you're my father, I still have... Lily, I know it's wrong, I know it's impossible. But I can't simply turn off my feelings. Samuel closed his eyes, fighting against his own demons. The feelings he had developed for her hadn't disappeared with the revelation of his paternity. If anything, they had become more confusing, more painful. Perhaps, he said carefully, we need time away from each other to process all of this. Perhaps. She wiped away the tears. But first, we need to deal with this blackmailer. I already have a plan for that. What is it? Samuel smiled, and for the first time in days, there was something predatory in the expression. We're going to give them exactly what they want, and then we're going to destroy them. I don't understand. You'll return to Boston tomorrow, but not to marry the congressman. You'll return to expose all the corruption we've discovered, to ensure that Robert and his associates pay for their crimes. And the photos, the blackmail? Leave that to me. There are more ways to destroy a man than ruining his reputation. Lily studied him, seeing the cold determination in his eyes. For the first time, she fully understood why her mother had fled from him years before. When Samuel Blackwood decided to destroy someone, he was relentless. All right, she said, but we do this together. As family. The word felt strange on her lips, loaded with everything they had lost and everything they could still build. As family, agreed Samuel, and for the first time since he had discovered the truth about Emily, he felt hope. Dawn arrived grey and heavy over Boston, mirroring the somber mood that hung over the hotel suite. Samuel had spent the night awake, making calls to contacts that he hadn't used in years, moving pieces on a chessboard that only he could fully see. Lily found him in the living room, still wearing the clothes from the night before, surrounded by papers, photographs, and an open laptop. You didn't sleep, she observed, noticing the lines of tension around his eyes. I didn't have time to sleep. Samuel raised his eyes from the computer, studying her. Even after everything they had discovered, even knowing she was his daughter, he still felt a strange pang in his chest upon seeing her. Coffee? Please. Lily sat in the opposite armchair, observing the scattered documents. What is all this? Information. About our blackmailer friend, and about Congressman Carver. Samuel served coffee for both of them, his movements precise despite the fatigue. I discovered some interesting things during the night. What kind of things? Samuel slid a photograph across the table. It was a grainy image, clearly taken from a distance, showing a middle-aged man in intense conversation with Robert Taylor. Our blackmailer from last night. His real name is Carlos Mendez. He's been working for Robert for 15 years, doing the kind of service that men like Robert prefer to keep in the shadows. Lily studied the photograph. So Robert is behind the blackmail? Partially, but there's more. Samuel opened the laptop and turned the screen toward her. Congressman Carver isn't just the man they wanted to force you to marry. He's also a silent partner of Robert in several ventures, including those that involved Emily's death. Including those. Samuel's voice became harder. It seems that your arranged marriage wasn't just about getting a young wife for the congressman. It was about permanently silencing Bianca Martinez's daughter. Lily's blood froze. They knew who I was from the beginning. They suspected. Your resemblance to Bianca was too strong to go unnoticed by those who knew her, and when you disappeared from the convent, they confirmed their suspicions. The Mother Superior was being blackmailed too. The convent owed a substantial amount in back taxes. Robert offered to settle the debt in exchange for some favors. Lily felt nausea rise in her throat. So, I never had a choice. From birth, my life was planned by others. Samuel stood up and walked to her, stopping beside her chair. For a moment he hesitated, then placed his hand gently on her shoulder. Now you have a choice, and power to make those choices. What power? Instead of answering directly, Samuel returned to the table and picked up another document. Your mother was smarter than anyone imagined, including me. What do you mean? The letter she left you wasn't the only thing she hid. Samuel handed her a sealed envelope. I found this last night, hidden inside the box where your mother, kept her personal documents at the convent. How did you get this? Money opens many doors, especially doors of indebted convents. Lily opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was another letter from Bianca, but this one was different, longer, more detailed, written with the urgency of someone who knew she was dying. "My dear Lily," the letter began, "if you're reading this, it means you've discovered the truth. About Samuel, about Emily, and about yourself. I know you must be confused, perhaps even angry with me for having kept these secrets, but you need to understand that every choice I made was to protect you. Samuel is your father. I loved him with every fiber of my being, and you are the product of that love. But you are also the product of fear, guilt, and the impossible circumstances that surrounded us. The night Emily died, I was in the house taking care of you, who was only a few months old. You were sleeping in the guest room when I heard strange voices coming from upstairs. Emily had come downstairs to get water and saw me in the hallway. She told me there were men in her father's office going through papers, talking about things she didn't understand. I hid you in the laundry room closet and went upstairs to see what was happening. That's when I saw Robert giving instructions to a man I didn't know. They were talking about eliminating inconvenient witnesses and about making certain evidence disappear. When Emily started down the stairs, one of the men saw her. There was a discussion in hushed voices, and then they took her back to her room. I knew what they were going to do, but I was paralyzed with fear. If I tried to save her, they would discover you too. That's the truth that haunted me, until my last day. I chose to save my daughter instead of saving the daughter of the man I loved. I don't expect you to forgive me for that choice, but I needed you to know the truth. There's one more thing you should know. In the safe at first. National Bank of Boston. Downtown branch, there's a deposit in your name. Account number 24718. The password is Emily's date of birth, 04151989. Inside that safe are documents that will prove not only Robert's involvement in Emily's death, but also his participation in a corruption scheme that continued for decades. Use this information wisely, my daughter, and if you can find a way to forgive a mother who failed when it mattered most, I would be grateful. With all my love and regret, Bianca. Lily's hands were trembling so much that she could barely hold the letter. Samuel watched her closely, seeing the range of emotions passing over her face. "She knew," whispered Lily. "She knew and did nothing." "She made an impossible choice," said Samuel carefully. "If she had tried to save Emily, both children might have died. But Emily died because greedy men decided that a child was disposable, not because your mother failed to save her." Lily raised her eyes to him, tears flowing freely. "How can you be so understanding? She could have saved your daughter." Samuel knelt before her chair, taking her hands in his. "Because she saved you, and you are my daughter too." The simplicity of the statement broke something inside Lily. She threw herself into Samuel's arms, sobbing against his chest, and he held her firmly, murmuring reassuring words into her hair. It was the first truly paternal embrace she had ever received, and even through the pain and confusion she felt something heal inside her. "What do we do now?" she asked when she finally managed to control herself. "Now we go to the bank. And then we teach Robert and his associates a lesson about underestimating the Blackwood family." The First National Bank of Boston was busy when they arrived, but Samuel's money quickly opened a path through the bureaucracy. The safe that Bianca had rented years before was exactly where she had said it would be. Inside they found a treasure trove of evidence: photographs, documents, contracts, bank records. Decades of corruption meticulously documented, as if Bianca had known that one day it would be necessary to use this information as a weapon. "My God," murmured Samuel, leafing through the papers. She documented everything. Every bribe, every fraudulent contract, every suspicious death. "There are at least a dozen names here," observed Lily. "Politicians, businessmen, judges." "Including our friend Congressman Carver," Samuel pointed to a series of photographs showing the congressman receiving envelopes of money from Robert. "And look at this." It was a video recording, clearly made in secret, showing Robert in a meeting with several powerful men. The quality wasn't perfect, but the conversation was clear enough to be damning. "The child saw too much," Robert was saying in the recording, "and the nanny too. We have to deal with both of them." "The child can be arranged to look like an accident," replied a voice that Samuel recognized as belonging to Congressman Carver. "But the woman might be useful. If she's pregnant by Blackwood, we can use that later." "How?" "The child will be our guarantee. If Blackwood ever becomes a problem, we'll have leverage over him." Samuel had to lean against the wall, the weight of the revelation hitting him like a punch to the stomach. They had planned to use Lily as a weapon against him since before she was born. "Samuel?" Lily touched his arm. "Are you okay?" "They planned everything," he said, his voice hoarse. "Your entire life was a contingency plan to control me, but it didn't work. I found you on my own." "Yes?" "And that scared them." Samuel straightened up, a cold determination taking over his expression. "That's why they tried to force you into marriage. If you were the congressman's wife, they would be controlling both of us." Lily studied the evidence spread before them. "There's enough material here to destroy all of them." "Yes, but we have to be strategic about how we use it." "What do you have in mind?" Samuel smiled, an expression that was simultaneously paternal and predatory. "We're going to give them a choice. They can face public justice or private justice." "And what's the difference?" "Public justice will be quick and legal. Private justice," he paused, "will be personal." They spent the rest of the afternoon copying and organizing the evidence, preparing multiple copies for different destinations. Samuel made contact with investigative journalists, public prosecutors, and even some rival politicians who would be interested in the information. When the sun began to set, they returned to the hotel to prepare for the final confrontation. "Nervous?" asked Samuel as Lily got ready for the dinner they had arranged with Robert and the congressman. "Should I be?" "Probably. Desperate men do desperate things." Lily emerged from the bathroom, wearing an elegant black dress that Samuel had bought for her during the afternoon. She looked older, more sophisticated, but there was still a vulnerability in her eyes that made Samuel's paternal heart contract. "You look—" He stopped, searching for appropriate words. "You look like a Blackwood." "It's strange," she said, adjusting the pearl necklace that completed the ensemble. "I spent my whole life wondering where I came from, and now that I know, I'm not sure if I like the answer." "Why?" "Because Blackwood means power, and power corrupts." Samuel considered this. Power can corrupt, but it can also protect, and it can bring justice when used correctly. And how do we know when we're using it correctly? When our actions protect the innocent instead of hurting the vulnerable. Lily nodded, seeming to accept the explanation. "So tonight we protect the innocent. Tonight we bring justice for Emily." The restaurant that Samuel had chosen was small and discreet, the kind of place where important conversations happened away from curious ears. Robert arrived first, clearly nervous, followed a few minutes later by Congressman Carver. Carver was exactly as Lily had imagined, a middle-aged man with graying hair, expensive suit, and eyes that calculated the value of everything and everyone around him. When he saw her, his eyes lingered on her in a way that made her want to take a shower. "Miss Martinez," he said, kissing her hand in a manner she found repulsive. "We finally meet. You're even more beautiful than in the photographs." "Congressman," she responded coldly, withdrawing her hand as soon as she could. "Samuel," Robert greeted tensely. "I hope we can resolve our difference in a civilized manner." "Oh, I'm sure we can," said Samuel, his voice soft but loaded with threat. They sat down, and for a few minutes there was superficial conversation about the menu and the weather. But the tension at the table was palpable. Finally, the congressman got straight to the point. "Mr. Blackwood, I understand there are some misunderstandings about the arrangements we made for Miss Martinez." "Misunderstandings," Samuel repeated. "No, Congressman. I'd say I understand perfectly. Then you know we'll all benefit if she simply fulfills her commitments." "What commitments?" Lily interrupted. "I never agreed to anything." "Your legal guardian agreed on your behalf," said Robert. "The contract is valid." "My legal guardian," repeated Lily slowly, "was being blackmailed. Hardly a situation of free consent." The congressman laughed condescendingly. "Girl, you clearly don't understand how the world works. Contracts are contracts, regardless of the circumstances." "And murders are murders," said Samuel calmly, "regardless of who orders them." The silence that followed was deafening. Robert visibly paled while the congressman stopped with his fork halfway to his mouth. "I don't know what you're talking about," said Robert finally. "No?" Samuel removed an envelope from his jacket and placed it on the table. "Perhaps this will refresh your memory." Robert opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were copies of the photographs and documents they had found in Bianca's safe, including clear images of both men in compromising situations. "Where did you get this?" whispered the congressman. "Bianca Martinez was a very careful woman," said Samuel. "She documented everything, every crime, every conspiracy, every death you ordered." "This doesn't prove anything," said Robert, but his voice was failing. "No," Lily leaned forward. "What about the recording where you discuss killing a 5-year-old child? Does that prove enough?" The congressman stood up abruptly. "I'm not going to sit here listening to ridiculous accusations." "Sit down," ordered Samuel, and there was something in his voice that made the man instinctively obey. "We're not finished." "What do you want?" asked Robert. "Justice," said Lily simply. "Justice is already being provided," added Samuel. "As we dine, copies of this evidence are being delivered to the district attorney's office, the FBI, and several media outlets." "You can't do that," said the congressman, panic finally appearing in his voice. "We already have," said Samuel. "The question now is whether you prefer to face the consequences publicly or privately." "What do you mean?" Samuel leaned forward, his cold blue eyes fixed on the two men. "Full confessions in writing, detailing all the crimes you committed. In exchange, I'll ensure that you have access to the best lawyers money can buy. And if we refuse, then I'll let justice take its natural course, and I can guarantee that men like you don't do well in prison." Robert and the congressman exchanged desperate looks. They were cornered and knew it. "We need time to think," said Robert finally. "You have 1 hour," said Samuel, checking his watch. "After that, the offer expires." The two men stood up and left hastily, leaving Samuel and Lily alone at the table. "Do you think they'll agree?" asked Lily. "It doesn't matter. Either way, they'll pay for what they did." "And what about us? What happens to us after this?" Samuel studied her for a long moment. "That depends on what you want." "I want a family," she said simply. "For the first time in my life, I want to belong somewhere. You'll always have a place in my life, Lily, as my daughter." "And the other feelings? The ones we had before discovering the truth?" Samuel closed his eyes for a moment. "Those are more complicated." "They don't need to be." "What do you mean?" "We can choose to leave them in the past. We can choose to build something new, something based on truth instead of misunderstandings." When Samuel opened his eyes, there was something like relief in them. "Could you do that?" "I can try, and you?" "I can try too." They were interrupted by the return of Robert and the congressman, both visibly shaken. "We've decided to accept your offer," said Robert. "Wise decision," said Samuel. "There's paper and pen in my hotel room. Let's go up." As they rose in the elevator, Lily wondered if justice for Emily could really heal the wounds of the past. Looking at Samuel, seeing the determination in his eyes, she hoped so. But in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that perhaps the real justice was yet to come, and that before everything ended, more secrets would come to light. That voice proved prophetic a few hours later, when Samuel's phone rang in the middle of the night. "Mr. Blackwood." It was a female voice he didn't recognize. "Who is this?" "Have information about your daughter. Information you'll want to hear." Samuel sat up in bed, fully awake. "What information?" "About who really killed Emily, and about why Lily is still in danger." The line went dead, leaving Samuel staring at the phone in the darkness. realizing that the truth he thought he had discovered might have been just the tip of the iceberg. Samuel couldn't sleep after the mysterious call. He stood at the window of the hotel, watching the city lights blink like earthly stars, while his mind processed the possibilities. Who could have information about Emily that he still didn't know? And why would Lily still be in danger if Robert and the congressman had already been neutralized? At dawn, he found Lily in the suite's living room, already dressed and drinking coffee. She greeted him with a smile that still carried the strangeness of their new relationship, but there was genuine warmth there, the kind of warmth that only true family can share. "You didn't sleep well?" she asked, noticing the dark circles under his eyes. "Someone called last night, said they had information about Emily and about you being in danger." The smile disappeared from Lily's face. "What kind of information?" "They didn't specify. But—" Samuel hesitated, then decided to share his concerns. "I have the feeling that we still haven't discovered the whole truth." "Do you think Robert lied in his confession?" "No. I think Robert told the truth that he knew, but maybe he himself didn't know everything." Before Lily could respond, the room phone rang. Samuel answered immediately. "Hello? Mr. Blackwood, I'm District Attorney Marina Sullivan. I need to speak with you urgently about the evidence you sent us." "Of course. When?" "Now, if possible. And Mr. Blackwood, bring Miss Martinez. She needs to hear what I have to say, too." An hour later, they were sitting in the austere office of the District Attorney, a woman in her mid-40s with intelligent eyes and a posture that radiated competence and determination. "The evidence you provided is extraordinary," she began, leafing through a stack of documents. "It will result in dozens of arrests and investigations that will extend for years." "So Robert and the congressman will be prosecuted?" asked Lily. "Oh, yes. But they're just the tip of the iceberg." D.A. Sullivan leaned forward. "What we discovered when we investigated these pieces of evidence more deeply is that there was a third person involved in Emily's death, someone who remained in the shadows, allowing Robert to take the blame." Samuel felt his blood freeze. "Who?" "Before I answer, I need to ask a question. Mr. Blackwood, who had complete access to your house in 1999, who knew your routine, Emily's schedule, and had keys to enter whenever they wanted?" "Several people. The housekeeper, Bianca, my driver." Samuel paused, a terrible suspicion beginning to form in his mind. "And your family?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Samuel closed his eyes, remembering details he had suppressed for years. "My brother," he whispered. "Mark had keys to the house. Mark Blackwood, 5 years younger than you, also an architect, minority partner in some of your companies." "Yes, but he was traveling at the time of Emily's death in Europe." "Was he?" D.A. Sullivan opened a folder and removed immigration documents. "According to our records, Mark Blackwood entered the United States 3 days before Emily's death and left the day after the funeral." Samuel felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. "That's not possible. He called me from Italy that night. Cell phones can be used anywhere, Mr. Blackwood, and with the technology of the time, it would have been easy to falsify the location of a call." Lily watched Samuel grow progressively paler. "Samuel, what does this mean?" "It means," said D.A. Sullivan, "that Mark Blackwood not only knew about the plan to murder Emily, but probably orchestrated it." "But why?" Samuel's voice came out strangled. "Why would my own brother? Money, power, jealousy, perhaps all three." The prosecutor removed more documents. "We discovered that Mark was deeply in debt in 1999. He had made bad investments and was on the verge of personal bankruptcy. He needed your death, Mr. Blackwood, to inherit your share of the business." "But I didn't die. Emily died." "Yes. And that led us to another disturbing discovery." D.A. Sullivan looked directly at Lily. "Miss Martinez, you were in the house that night too, weren't you?" "Yes, as a baby. My mother was taking care of me and Emily. And you almost died too. According to the medical report we found, you were hospitalized that same night with symptoms of poisoning." Lily felt the world spin. "Poisoning?" "The same type of medication that was used on Emily was found in your blood, but in a smaller, Quantity, as if you had received just a small dose. Samuel stood up abruptly, walking to the window. He tried to kill them both, Emily and Lily. It seemed so. But something went wrong with the original plan. Bianca, whispered Lily. My mother discovered what was happening and saved us. Partially, corrected the prosecutor. She managed to save you, but not Emily. And that's why Mark let Robert take the blame, said Samuel, his voice carrying a cold fury that Lily had never heard before. He orchestrated everything and then hid behind others. And Bianca? Why did she run away? Asked Lily. Because she knew too much. Because she was in the house that night and might have seen something she shouldn't have. And he let her live. She disappeared before they took any action. And then they discovered that she was pregnant. They decided it was better to leave her in peace as long as she remained silent. Pregnant by whom? De Sullivan hesitated. We believe by Mr. Blackwood. The timeline matches, and there are certain genetic markers in the documents that suggest a close relationship. Where is he now? Asked Lily. The DA exchanged a concerned look with her assistant. That's the reason I asked you to come here. Mark Blackwood disappeared from his residence in Paris 3 days ago, around the same time that the first pieces of evidence began to circulate. He knows we've discovered him, said Samuel, and there's more. The prosecutor hesitated. We have reason to believe that he hired professionals to deal with people who could testify against him. You're saying we're targets. I'm saying that you need police protection immediately. Samuel laughed bitterly. Police protection against my own brother. How did we get to this? Before anyone could answer, the lights in the office went out. In the darkness that followed, they heard confused voices coming from the corridor, then the unmistakable sound of gunshots. Get down, shouted D.A. Sullivan, pulling a gun from her drawer. Samuel threw himself over Lily, protecting her with his body as they crawled behind. The prosecutor's desk. In the corridor, the shots ceased, replaced by an ominous silence. Is there an emergency? Exit, whispered Samuel. Yes, but we have to cross the corridor to get there. Samuel Blackwood, a familiar voice echoed through the office. I know you're in there. Let's talk like civilized brothers. Samuel closed his eyes, recognizing the voice he had heard throughout his childhood, youth and adulthood, the voice of the man he had trusted, protected, and loved as family. Mark, he murmured. Will you come out alone, or do I have to come get you? Samuel looked at Lily, seeing the fear in her eyes, but also seeing the same determination that he recognized as a family trait. She was a Blackwood, and Blackwoods didn't hide from confrontations. Stay here, he whispered to her. No, she whispered back. We go together. Lily, I'm your daughter, your family. We face this together. Samuel felt a wave of paternal pride mixed with absolute terror, but he also recognized that she was right. They were family now, and family doesn't abandon family. All right, he said to D.A. Sullivan, open the door. The prosecutor looked at them as if they had gone mad, but after a moment she walked to the door and slowly unlocked it. On the other side, Mark Blackwood was waiting for them. At 47, he was still handsome, charming, with the kind of smile that instinctively made people trust him. But his eyes were different now, cold, calculating, without any trace of the brother that Samuel remembered. Samuel, he said warmly, as if they were meeting for a casual lunch. You look good. Life in Europe has been good to you. Mark. Samuel stepped out from behind the desk, placing himself between his brother and Lily. How long have you been planning to kill me? Kill you? Mark laughed genuinely. Samuel, I never wanted to kill you. I just wanted what was rightfully mine. Nothing I built was rightfully yours. No? Mark's eyes hardened. I was your partner, your brother. Worked alongside you for years, and yet everything bore your. Samuel Blackwood Architecture, Samuel Blackwood Construction, Samuel Blackwood Resorts. Where was the name Mark in anything? You were a minority partner because you invested less initial capital. That's how our agreement worked. And B, agreement that you drafted. an agreement that always left me in second place. Samuel studied his brother, looking for signs of the man he had known all his life. "So you killed my daughter out of jealousy?" "I didn't kill Emily to hurt you," said Mark, and for a moment his voice became softer. "I killed her because she had seen documents that she shouldn't have seen, just like Bianca." "What documents?" "Contracts that showed that I had been embezzling money from the company for years. Emily was playing in your office and must have seen something, because the next day she heard you asking about discrepancies in the accounting books." The truth hit Samuel like an avalanche. "You had been stealing from me for years." "Taking what was rightfully mine," corrected Mark. "But when you started to suspect, I knew it was just a matter of time until you discovered everything." "So you hired Robert to assassinate an innocent child." "Robert was just the intermediary, and Emily didn't suffer. It was quick and painless." "She was 5 years old," Samuel's voice echoed down the corridor. "And you're 52, replied Mark coldly, "and you're still interfering with my plans." "What plans?" Instead of answering, Mark looked directly. "Lily. So this is the famous lost daughter. Bianca did a good job hiding you all these years." "Leave her out of this," said Samuel, taking a protective step in front of Lily. "Oh, but she's already involved. She's the only living witness who can connect me directly to that night. She was a baby. She doesn't remember anything." "Maybe, not consciously, but modern medicine can do wonders with repressed memories." Mark smiled coldly. "Besides, she inherited something very interesting from you, Samuel." "What?" 49% of the shares of Blackwood International." Samuel frowned. "That's not possible. You never formally transferred the shares, but according to American inheritance laws, recognized children have automatic rights to their parents' property." The realization hit Samuel like lightning. If Lily was officially recognized as his daughter, she would automatically inherit a significant portion of his business empire. "With my own shares and hers," continued Mark, "I would have majority control of the company over my dead body, if necessary." Mark removed a pistol from his jacket. "But I'd prefer that you simply sign the transfer papers that I prepared. And then you two disappear. A tragic accident, perhaps. Father and daughter reunited in death, as they should have been reunited in life." Lily stepped out from behind Samuel, facing Mark directly. "You're a monster. I'm a businessman who made difficult decisions. You killed an innocent child for money. I killed a child who was threatening my business, just as now I'm going to kill a young woman who is threatening my future." "No," said Samuel firmly, "you're not going to touch her. Samuel, you've always been too protective of the things you loved. It was that way with Emily, and now it's that way with her. And you've always been too envious of the things you couldn't have." "Perhaps. But this time, I'm going to have everything." Mark raised the gun, pointing it at Lily. But before he could pull the trigger, Samuel moved. 24 years of repressed anger, pain, and guilt exploded in a moment of pure fury. Samuel threw himself at his brother, and both fell to the floor in a desperate struggle for control of the gun. "Run!" shouted Samuel to Lily and the prosecutor, but Lily didn't run. Instead, she picked up a heavy crystal trophy from D.A. Sullivan's desk and waited for her opportunity. The fight between the brothers was brutal and desperate. Mark was younger, but Samuel fought with the fury of a father protecting his daughter. They rolled across the floor, the gun changing hands several times. "Samuel!" shouted Lily when she saw Mark regain control of the pistol. Without hesitating, she brought the crystal trophy down with all her strength, hitting Mark on the head. He collapsed immediately, the gun slipping from his hands. For a moment, there was total silence. Then Samuel slowly stood up, looking at his unconscious brother on the floor. "Is he dead?" asked Lily, her voice trembling. Samuel knelt and checked Mark's pulse. "No, but he's going to have a terrible headache when he wakes up." D.A. Sullivan was already on the phone, calling for backup and an ambulance. "The police will be here in a few minutes." Samuel turned to Lily, who was standing beside him, still holding the broken trophy. "You saved my life," he said softly. "You would have done the same for me." "Yes, I would do anything for you." For the first time since discovering that she was his daughter, Samuel embraced her without hesitation or embarrassment. It was a purely paternal embrace, full of pride, relief, and unconditional love. "This is how family should be," murmured Lily against his chest. "This is how our family will be from now on." 3 months later, Samuel and Lily were standing in the cemetery where Emily was buried. It was a sunny spring day, and the flowers they had brought shone against the white stone of the tomb. "She would have liked you," said Samuel, placing the white roses on the gravestone. "Do you think so?" "I'm sure Emily loved when I brought new projects home. She would have been fascinated to know that I now have a sister for her in heaven and a daughter here on earth." Lily smiled, placing her own offering, a small paper castle that she had folded the night before. "For the little architect." They remained in comfortable silence for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. "The newspapers say that Mark's trial will begin next week," said Lily finally. "Yes, and Robert and the congressman have already been sentenced. Do you feel anything for him? For Mark?" Samuel considered the question. "I feel sorry for the man he could have been, but I can't forgive the man he chose to become." "And what about my mother? Have you managed to forgive her? Your mother made the only choice she could make that night. She saved you, and for that I'll be eternally grateful to her." Lily nodded, satisfied with the answer. "What happens now? Now we build a life, a real life, based on truth. And the company? The shares I supposedly inherited? They're yours by right, but if you want, we can be real partners, build something together." "I'd like that." They began walking back to the car, leaving Emily resting in peace for the first time in 24 years. "Samuel," said Lily when they reached the cemetery gate. "Yes?" "Thank you for finding me, or for letting me find you. Thank you for being brave enough to seek the truth even when it was dangerous. That's what family does, isn't it? Face danger together?" "That's exactly what family does." They drove back to Boston in comfortable silence, each contemplating the future that stretched before them. There was work to do, wounds to heal, and a company to rebuild on more solid foundations. But for the first time in decades, Samuel Blackwood wasn't alone. And for the first time in her life, Lily Martinez, now officially Lily Blackwood, had a real family. That night, in the apartment that Samuel had bought for Lily in Boston, close enough for them to visit each other daily, but far enough for her to have her independence, she found a letter on her desk. It was from her mother, a final letter that Samuel had found among Bianca's documents and had kept for the right moment. "My dear Lily," the letter began, "if you're reading this, it means you've found Samuel and discovered the truth about your family. I hope you can forgive a mother who did the best she could in impossible circumstances. You were conceived in love, grew up in love, and deserve to be loved for the rest of your life. In Samuel, you'll find not just a father, but a man who understands the value of true family. Take care of each other, protect each other, and always remember that love, real, true love, is stronger than any darkness the world might offer. Be happy, my daughter. You deserve all the happiness that life can give. With all my eternal love, Mom." Lily carefully folded the letter and kept it with the other memories of her mother. Then she picked up the phone and dialed Samuel's number. "Hello?" His voice sounded tired but content. "I just wanted to say good night," she said, "and that I love you, the way a daughter loves a father." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Samuel answered, his voice choked with emotion. "I love you too, Lily, the way a father loves a daughter. Sleep well." "You too." When they hung up, both smiled in the darkness of their respective homes. The past had been confronted, justice had been done, and the future was full of possibilities. But more important than all of this, they had found something that both had searched for their entire lives without knowing, a true family, built not just on blood, but on conscious choices of love, protection, and mutual loyalty. And as the city of Boston pulsed around them with its infinite energy, Samuel and Lily Blackwood finally rested in peace, knowing that they would never again be alone in the world. The story that had begun with secrets and revenge had ended with truth and redemption. And sometimes when life offers that rare opportunity for transformation, that's all that really matters. Love had won, family had won, and finally, after decades of darkness, light had returned to the House of Blackwood.